To mark the International Day for the Eradication of Poverty brings the focus on an estimated 133 million people classed by the National Bureau of Statistics as multi-dimensionally poor. Nigeria is often regarded as the world capital of poverty, with data of 71 million people living in extreme poverty. To mark the day, the federal government has launched the Renewed Hope Conditional Cash Transfer Program. The initiative aims to assist vulnerable Nigerians as part of broad poverty as alleviation efforts continues. State House correspondent Adesuwa Moran reports.
Despite Nigeria's economic potential and vast natural resources, poverty remains a stubborn issue, affecting more than half of its citizens, that's over 100 million people. The statistics are sobering. According to latest data from the National Bureau of Statistics, 63% of persons living within Nigeria are multidimensionally poor. This translates to 133 million people struggling to meet their basic needs. This situation is further worsened with the removal of petrol subsidy and its attendant economic consequences. To address this pressing issue, President Bola Tinubu, represented by Secretary to the Government of the Federation, George Akume, has launched the Renewed Hope Conditional Cash Transfer Program on the occasion of the International Day for the Eradication of Poverty. This initiative will provide 75,000 naira to 15 million vulnerable households, disbursed at 25,000 naira per month for 3 months.
Today, my administration is launching the Renewed Hope Conditional Cash Transfer Program for vulnerable groups as an immediate intervention to cushion the effects of fuel subsidy removal and other economic shocks.
While the Nigerian government has implemented various poverty alleviation programs, challenges persist in ensuring inclusivity and reaching the most vulnerable segments of the population. The World Bank is now calling for reliable delivery systems to effectively reach vulnerable people who really need aid in an efficient and transparent process.
We're happy to be able to support this through the financing that our board approved quite a while ago. Of course, it's very important this cash transfers work only if they are robustly delivered and reach the people in need. So we're here as well to help support that, to make sure that the systems are strong, that there's accountability.
There is concern when payments are being made like this. And in this particular case, the audit trail is there. The mechanism that is going to be used is one that is biometric. It is proven. You will be able to name every single person that has received those funds. So Nigerians can rest assured that this is an efficient and accountable way of providing relief to poor Nigerians.
Betta Edu, the supervising minister of the Humanitarian Ministry, reports that the first phase of payment has already begun after a successful verification process conducted over the past 3 weeks.
Verification process is still ongoing, and so for the first set that have been verified, they would receive their monies immediately. Subsequently, others who are verified will receive their money. For Nigerians who do not have accounts and do not have the NIN, we are actually working to open accounts and money wallets for all of these persons so that they can have their money sent directly to them. We would equally be pasting out the list of beneficiaries at the different communities.
She emphasizes the commitment to expand the program to reach even more beneficiaries,
which would carry the vulnerable pensioners, the vulnerable veterans, and the wives of fallen heroes, as well as other areas of concern where they were not fully captured.
Beneficiaries like Okajana and Hamid Ishiaka expressed their gratitude for the government's financial assistance, sharing their initial skepticism upon receiving notifications.
I was discouraging because of the situation of Nigeria. It can be kidnapped, it can be anything bad. I said, well, let me just summon my courage. I told my wife said it's not part of it, that I should not go.
Although I think it's all those 419s, but I enter, I forgot about it. But yesterday evening, I just received a call that I should report here this morning. So, like play.
The presidency says the new program is part of a broader effort to tackle poverty, including enhancing food security, generating employment opportunities, and providing social protection. Adesua Omorwad, Arise News.
Well, Rufai, finally the conditional cash transfer program has been launched yesterday. Your take on this?
So, I mean, this has been on ground for a while. It was at the tail end of the Buhari administration that we talked about it, and the Buhari administration said they were going to push it forward to this administration to be able to make their decision on it. And they made their decision on it. 75,000 naira, they've even expanded the scope for 3 months, 15 million. But my question is again, what are the modalities for the register? So at first, the minister, Betta, says verification is going on. She talked about using technology. Takes, for instance, that man that is being given money, with coordinates, can I pinpoint his address? Are we also properly tying this conditional cash transfer to set goals and objectives? You see, the reason why things like Bolsa Familia succeeded, that became a big one, for Brazil and Lula, was because most of the givings were tied to outcomes like education. And it was those same children in the early 2000s that their parents benefited from Bolsa Familia. They were the ones that, as at the last election, they had become medical doctors and the likes, and they were the ones that practically voted for Lula. You can see a chain of impact in that project. 25,000 naira for 3 months. After that, what happens? Are we tying it to outcomes? Because you see, it's not today. And what about the way we manage it? Is there any corruption? It's not today that we've had schemes like this. In the early 90s, we had a scheme called the People's Bank, run by Maria Shokenu of blessed memories. It was a derivative of the Grameen Bank of Mohammed Yunus. We all know how People's Bank went. We should just ensure that the money is given. The Minister of Finance said there's a trail to the money. We'd like to see the money trail. We'd like to see an audited account of all the people that have been given. We'd also like to be able to investigate the social circumstance of these people. And maybe going forward, tie it to some outcomes so that we can effectively watch these people and it's just money just being given to them. And afterwards, nothing happens, because we need to be able to change the lives of people. We need to be able to bring people out of poverty. And it must be administered properly, because this money is not free. It's a loan, and we'll pay back.
Yeah. All right. Dr. Batim.
Okay. The Minister of Humanitarian Affairs and Poverty Alleviation, Betta Idu, yesterday added the point that 61 million Nigerians will benefit from this poverty alleviation scheme. Yesterday was the International Day for the Eradication of Poverty. So President Tinubu and the minister in charge of poverty alleviation and all the persons involved chose, if you like, the right occasion to announce the commencement of this, grant to poor households, which they had announced previously. Now, what was announced yesterday will be a total of about 1.3 trillion naira in terms of cash. And this cash transfer that they are talking about is for 3 months. 25,000 naira per household between, as they announced previously, October and December. So the families that will be covered, the 15 million households, which, Betta Idu says will translate into about 61 million, they will get 25 million, for the next 3 months. The question is, what happens after the 3 months? Will the cost of a loaf of bread suddenly come down? Would the naira appreciate and stop yo-yoing? Would the objective conditions under which Nigerians exist improve? That's number one. Number two, by World Bank's own admission, the population of Nigerians that are living in multidimensional poverty is already over 100 million. So you target 61 million people, assuming that given the reality in Nigeria today that the 25,000 naira even gets to those families, what difference would that make? The other point is that, yes, the president was quoted as having described this as renewed hope conditional cash transfer. Renewed hope. Where is that renewed hope coming from? When they started this conditional cash transfer under the Buhari administration, the received wisdom was that this was a political gimmick. And we saw how this conditional cash transfer became problematic and was used for purely political reasons. I don't know if either of you has seen anybody that collected money from it. We also have poor people, around us, wherever you are in Nigeria. There are people who can benefit from conditional cash transfer, but we have not seen them. The other point is about the opaqueness of what is called the National Social Register that is used for the disbursement of these, grants to underprivileged Nigerians, as they are described. Vulnerable, that's the phrase they use, vulnerable households. Okay, how many vulnerable members of vulnerable households have you seen saying that they have collected money? However, the World Bank representative in Nigeria, who was shown on the screen and who was also at the event, said, okay, cash transfer is one of the ways to, alleviate poverty as a strategy. Well, look, many of these international models about how to run society may work elsewhere. They don't work here. So what is the problem? That, international models, patterns that work elsewhere do not work in Nigeria. It's because Nigeria is Nigeria. This is an economy that is based on consumption and privilege, not production. If we want to alleviate poverty, we have seen under the Buhari administration that it's not about distributing cash. It may work elsewhere. It's not working here, and it's not likely to work here. In fact, the menace of corruption in Nigeria, high corruption, high-end corruption, will not even make many of these so-called dandified, people-friendly policies work. So what is it that we should do in Nigeria? We need to focus more on providing an enabling environment for the flourishing of individual talent. We need to pay attention to productivity. I keep saying the point here. When I was chairman editorial board of The Guardian, there was a balcony where big men could go and stand. And, if I was bored in the office, I could go and stand in the balcony. Buses would be going up and down around closing time, taking people from factories, from Apapa, going up and down. Many of those factories now have become places of religious worship. You don't see any vehicles taking people from factories anymore. I knew people who were doing shifts. Many companies in Nigeria were producing. People were happy because people had jobs to do. So President Tinubu should not think that, look, this model, this jaded model of just dashing 25,000 naira to people, to either 15 million households or 61 million members of a totally impoverished society. Even the estimation that 100 million are all of us are impoverished. That is the truth. And in fact, I've said it before on this program. This 25,000 naira that they are giving out, No. All of us are vulnerable under the kind of reality we have found ourselves. And that's why all the factories of olden times have been taken over by places of religious worship. People go to church expecting miracles. Miracles can only happen if you have good leaders who understand the subject and who are ready to make a difference. Not all this grandstanding about pure phrases borrowed from, neoliberal textbooks.
All right, so a number of people have underscored the importance of conditional cash transfer as an immediate response to people facing difficulties based on some of the recent reforms and policy directions of this administration, one of which, of course, is the removal of fuel subsidy, rising inflation in the country, a number of factors which has plunged more people into poverty. Hence, I believe that that's 133 million people who are said to be living in multidimensional poverty might have increased by now. But let's go on to the issue with regards to this initiative that has been lauded in many quarters. We saw the country director of the World Bank talking about the fact that this is a great initiative and has worked in other countries based on how it is implemented and to ensure that the most vulnerable are the ones who actually benefit from this scheme. But beyond that, a few questions, and perhaps from the minister, as Honorable Minister, might be willing to respond to that. I recall earlier on when we had her on the show, we had asked about the lessons from the previous administration with regards to the National Social Register, if there was going to be some form of investigation probe. The end point of that was not necessarily to, get people heads rolling. That would be important. That is necessary. But also the importance of that was also to see lessons that could be learned in terms of how it was implemented, what the failures recorded were, some of the criticisms from that particular scheme, and how it can be avoided under this administration. We don't know if this was conducted. We don't know if there were any questions asked or investigations done, so that we do not repeat the mistakes of the previous administration and we're able to learn from there. So that's one question. The other thing is that we had also said, 133 multidimensionally poor Nigerians, 61 million households and, 15 million households and 61 million potential beneficiaries. If you look at 4, humans per household. How will you distill the 61 most vulnerable out of the 133 million? What is the process of checking who ought to benefit from this scheme, and out of the 133 million, who should not benefit? That's another metric we'd like to be explained. The Minister for Finance, Mr. Wale Edun, had talked about the fact that it was biometric, it was tech run. What is the process? So it's not enough. So we want transparency, especially because this particular scheme under the last administration was shrouded in a lot of controversy. So we need to answer these questions, because while we celebrate this, it will be a total waste of money if the most vulnerable do not have access to this money, or if the process by which they are identified is not transparent and fair. So a few questions there, and hopefully in the next coming days we'll get to get some answers in that regard and ensure that all the most vulnerable in Nigeria are responded to. I think it's also important to say finally that this is one of the conditions for the organized labor in terms of their 30-day ultimatum given on the 2nd of October to the government in order for them not to embark on another nationwide strike. Is this sufficient to satisfy organized labor in terms of immediate reactions? And also the agricultural sector, don't forget that said farmers would get some form of incentives to address the rising food inflation and what the president declared in July as a national emergency or state of emergency on food security. We'll move on to the next story. The Nigeria Press Council, NPC, has proposed an amendment to the Act establishing the NPC to substitute its name and function to be replaced with another organization known as the Media Certification Board. The Executive Secretary of NPC, Mr. Francis Umosu, canvassed the change yesterday when the Minister of Information and National Orientation, Mr. Mohammed Idris, visited the NPC Secretariat in Abuja. He said the MCB will be responsible for the registration of all journalists in print, broadcasts, and online platforms in the industry, so long as they have journalism training and background. Thus, all media workers and media institutions will have a registration board to be controlled by the MCB and pay some money that goes to the maintenance of the NPC so it can generate its own fund. All right, okay. registration board for journalists in Nigeria?
You know, in Nigeria, we have a penchant for going 15 steps backward. And when you look at things like this, another draconian way at which we think. Registration and Certification Board for journalists in Nigeria. First, I think I need to clear up a lot of misconceptions. Journalism is a field that respects the multiplicity of disciplines. So when you couch it and say it's only people that have a background in journalism, the best journalists in the world are not people that have a background in journalism, are people that have integrity and respect for the stories, and they've developed their skills over the years. One of the most celebrated writers in this country, Peter Pan Ahuru, became a sub-editor in Daily Times at the age of 20. Till today, you will still always talk about Peter Pan when you talk about the history of journalism in Nigeria because of the stellar quality of his work. So when you're having a certification board that says, oh, people that hitherto have journalism training, you register them, they also pay, it's another draconian way. There's a guild of editors already. There's NUJ. What certification board again? So a body now dispenses licenses on a yearly basis where they pay money. So if people in the top echelon of the body don't like your face, they don't renew your license. Another way of gagging the press. It has always been something that I've seen long coming, this constant attempt to be able to gag the press and take the power of the press. Is that what the development of journalism is today? And these people do not understand the evolution of journalism itself. Look at the world today, the traditional medium have been relegated because the multiplicity of effect across medium is now in the hands of the new publishers, which are the platforms of this world, the social media platforms and all of that. So it has evolved. So if people like Sanjay Gupta that are medical doctors practice here, you will say otherwise. These are not the conversations we ought to be having. The conversations are how we can look forward and first fight for the welfare of journalists. Secondly, try as much as possible to embrace the new tenets of technology that is coming into our jobs. Artificial intelligence and the likes.
Okay, there is a history to this. What we're dealing with the proposal by the Executive Secretary of the National Press Council is regulation of the media, and also what practitioners would describe as censorship. Now, the background is that in 1992, the administration, the Babangida administration, came up with a Press Council Act, number 85, I think, decree number 85 of 1992, creating the Nigerian Press Council, NPC. Now, so it's an official agency of government. The chairperson of that agency is appointed by the president, and then representatives are taken from the Guild of Editors, the NPAN, the Broadcasting Organization of Nigeria, two general members of society, News Agency of Nigeria also had a seat on the board. And the whole idea was to enforce registration of media houses, pry into the training of journalists and determine the curriculum, and also at the same time deal with public complaints. Since the establishment of that agency in 1992, journalists in Nigeria have kicked. And their point, basically, is that censorship is not allowed. And it's on the basis of that that the Nigerian Guild of Editors, the Nigerian Press Organization, let me use that umbrella term, which includes everybody, had insisted that, look, it is better to have self-regulation rather than government coming through the back door of an agency to control, to muzzle the press under the guise of regulation. What then happened was that the Nigerian Press Organization over the years came up with this idea of the ombudsman. The ombudsman representing the Nigerian Press Organization will be an independent body that will look into complaints. The legal argument is that, look, if people have complaints, including government, about the behavior of the Nigerian press, there are already established provisions in the criminal code relating to defamation, divided into libel and slander, on the basis of which you can go to court and assert your rights. But for government to take it upon itself, behaving as if this is China, as if this is North Korea, and try to dictate as if this is Stalin's Russia, to dictate to journalists in Nigeria will be unacceptable. In more recent times, what the Nigerian Press Organization has done is to set up what it calls the Nigerian Media Complaints Commission, a 9-man panel led by my former boss, Elwem Emeka Izeze, managing director and editor-in-chief of The Guardian in our time. And there are others there. There is Mrs. Dupe Ajayi Gbadebo and others, nine of them, who are supposed to do the ombudsman work to protect the integrity of journalism under Section 22 and Section 39 of the 1999 Constitution. Other institutions within this space have also gone ahead to have internal ombudsman units. This Day newspaper, our sister publication, has an ombudsman in-house, KK, Kayode Komolafe, Great Malabite, okay, who is the ombudsman for This Day. So if you have complaints, there is an in-house man in This Day newspaper who can look at your complaints. In Premium Times, as far back as 2017, they created what they call, an ombudsman unit. All of these efforts speaking to the conflict between government and the media with regard to the freedom of information guaranteed in Section 39 of the 1999 Constitution, guaranteed in Article 19 of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, guaranteed in Article 8 of the African Charter of Peoples and Human Rights. So this is the context of this conversation, and we urge the Nigerian government and the officials who don't even understand the subject. The chairman of the committee, House Arrest Committee, was quoted as saying, regulating the media is not in doubt. We will do it. Who is the illiterate that is talking? Okay? I know he's the secretary of the Nigerian Press Secretary Council who doesn't know what he's talking about. Any effort to control the media, either through so-called social media bill or hate speech prohibition bill, once it violates the basic law, the principles of the basic law, as enshrined in the Constitution, will be unacceptable. And I imagine that media practitioners will continue to resist it, not just in Nigeria, but also internationally.
Absolutely. Now, just to mention that this is just a proposal by the Secretary of the NPC, Mr. Francis Nwosu, who had met when the Minister of Information and Orientation had visited the Secretariat, and he had moved or canvassed for a motion to amend the acts that set up the NPC. So again, just to mention, it's been resisted because of the, the reasons highlighted, and to mention that it's not yet done, it's just a proposal, and they are pushing for this. However, as has already been said, every effort to gag or to regulate in terms of censoring the media would be resisted.